It is so small and lightweight and sharp. It's a good little lens.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, it's a great little lens. Small but mighty. Okay, some recommended pet portrait settings. I'll just kind of go over what I prefer, how I prefer to shoot. This isn't, everybody kind of has their own way of shooting, so I would say use the mode that you're comfortable with shooting. I tend to shoot more on manual because I want full control, but aperture priority is another really great way to photograph pets because you can set your aperture. So when you think aperture, you know what your depth of field is kind of going to be like, you know what amount of light you're going to let in. And then it just kind of figures out your
shutter speed.
Thank you. Brain keeps going on pause here. I'm drinking coffee to help with that.
That's why we're doing this as a team.
It's really great. I appreciate you, Troy. Thank you. Program is a mode on our cameras, which is a lot like automatic, but you have other controls. You can change it. You can control the flash. You can pop the flash up if you want to. You can choose to not have the flash. You can also use exposure compensation in there. And scene mode. So scene mode, I had a note here just to mention that it limits your ability to change specific options, like because it controls, you're telling it what you want it to shoot, and so it's saying these are the best settings for it, and so you can't change those out of there unless you go to one of these others. Shoot with a wide aperture, f4, f2.8, f1.8. I would say shoot for more of like the 4 to 2.8 range because of your depth of field. If you have a very, very shallow depth of field, it's very hard to keep the eyes in focus that way. So, I tend to use single autofocus point because I want control over where that focus point is. I want it right on top of the pet's eye, but I do realize that that's a hard thing to do because the pet moves. So you have to really be willing to move that focus point around and know your camera very well if you're going to use a single autofocus point, because just be willing to have some that are out of focus. The small cluster might work better like a group of 5 focus points that you can move around in a small cluster, just because it can hop over the sensor a little bit faster than the single. But I tend to use the single continuous autofocus so that it will be autofocus and low burst mode. I go back and forth between just using a single shot mode versus low burst, because I don't want a ton of photos to have to sift through. I want to be able to get in. Then maybe that comes from my film days also. I don't want to waste film. That's probably just inherently built into me. There's nothing wrong with using low burst mode and just getting rid of the ones that didn't work. If you use low burst mode in conjunction with continuous autofocus, it will re-autofocus in between every image.
But not on high burst?
No, not on high. It will focus on the first one, focus on the first plane, and then maintain that same plane of focus throughout the burst that you're taking, as long as you're holding it down. I will say that is good for fast moving stuff, like moving laterally, like horizontally. So if it's not changing the plane of focus in and out, continuous autofocus will re-autofocus if something is moving to you or away from you. That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What's the difference between continuous autofocus and burst mode? So these are different. This is our super control panel on Olympus. So I have highlighted here the CAF, which is a section where you go and change your type of focusing, whether it's SAF, single autofocus, continuous autofocus, and various other options there. This tells the camera to focus once. If you're on single autofocus, it focuses one time. When you press the shutter halfway, that focuses once and then stops. Continuous autofocus will, if you press the shutter halfway down, continue to look and refocus that way. And then burst mode is where you take a series of images. So low burst would take, something like between 8 and 10 images, depending on which camera we're talking about. And then like a high burst can take up to 15 frames a second on mechanical shutter. We actually have cameras that will shoot up to 60 frames a second. 60.
That's crazy.
I know, it's great. Did that answer the question? Is there another way I could?
Well, can I just chime in on it a little bit? Yeah, I thought it was important that we talk about these too, because I know sometimes in the store, when we're talking with potential camera owners, they don't always realize that, what exposure mode you've got your camera in is separate from what focus mode you have your camera in, which is separate from what burst mode you have your camera in. So it is really important to understand that these three things, your exposure mode, your drive mode, and your focus mode, are all separate. And you can sort of mix and match depending upon what your creative inclination is, or what your subject matter is, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's important to know that just because you are in continuous autofocus does not mean that you are in continuous motor drive. You could be in single shot motor drive and continuous autofocus. So each time you press the shutter halfways, it starts focusing, but when you depress it all the way, no matter how hard you hold it down, it will only take one picture if you're in single mode. So it's just important to know that you can mix and match those, and you should mix and match those depending upon what you want. That's what I got.
Yes, I think that's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me go back here actually. So another piece to this puzzle is right next to CAF, where you see all these little dots here. These are your focus points. These you also can change from what I was talking about earlier, single or group. So here's what these look like. So if I'm shooting a portrait of a pet, this is a single right here with the car. It's just on the tail light of the car. There is a smaller single point in the middle here with the flower, so you can get even more fine-tuned focus on your autofocus there. The one to the right of that, of the person kayaking, that's the group of 5, so it looks like a little plus there. So these are the ones that I like to use for pet portraits. Some of the tips that I have listed here are: expect to take many photos. Set yourself up for success, to not get frustrated that you have to take many photos. It's just going to happen because they move around. And as well behaved as my dog is, he's still stubborn. So he doesn't always, sit still when I need him to. Anticipate movement. So you will be moving around a lot with your pet. They're just going to move. So like I said, set yourself, just expect it. Anticipate the moment. So any awesome thing could happen at any time. So be ready for it. Don't hesitate to snap the photo. It's not wasteful. We're not using film. Have patience. Capture their personality. That is just something that comes with knowing your pet. You know your pet. You know that they have a personality, and you know that they have facial expressions, and the way that their ears will like perk up or go down. Those are facial expressions, and it's conveying something to you. So capturing that is important. I bribe my dog for photos all the time. Treats. I mean, he's very food motivated. This guy is. Some dogs, I know some dogs that are not food motivated, and maybe a toy can bribe them. Just like hold the toy above the camera, have them looking at it so that they can look at the camera. Yeah, and my dog loves bacon, so those are ways you can bribe your dog or your cat. I don't have as much experience photographing cats as I do dogs, and that's very apparent in the photo examples that I have here. But I would imagine that they would be cool with treats too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And use the environment around to frame the photo and use lighting and things like that. Just be aware of your environment, what's in the background, so that you can compose your photo. That's something that I started realizing several years ago. Like, actually, what is in focus and in the foreground of my photo isn't the only thing in the photo. What's in the background actually is very important also, even if it's out of focus. Also, if it's just totally blurred out, then it creates different colors, so just be aware of that. So I just have some photo examples of these things that we just talked about. You're going to take a lot of photos. So here's just a very small screen cap of all the photos that I have of dogs in my camera roll. Anticipate the moment. So I love this photo taken by my friend Donna. This, I don't know how she got this photo, but it was just at the right moment. They're wearing the same coat and they're both looking the same direction. I thought it was adorable. So anything could happen at any time. Be ready for it. Capture their personality. So my dog, I mentioned a second ago, is very stubborn. He has a heart of gold. I love this guy, obviously. But this kind of shows his stubbornness. I was making him sit still for a portrait, and I just captured that kind of look. It's very, very regal look too. This was taken with window lights in a room that is otherwise pretty dark. So there's window light on his right, my left. And then all the walls in this room are painted pretty dark brown. So it was not reflecting any of that light. And it was creating this really kind of nice outline of his face.
Yeah, it's a very classic and like classy sort of portrait. And I do love then, just the way you shaped him with the light from the window. And then just that bright, colorful bow tie is just fantastic. So it really is a great picture.
Thank you. Yeah, his bow tie. I love his bow ties. He loves them too. I don't know if it's just because when I put this color on, he knows it's time for a WALK, but we just went for a WALK, so he's napping right now. Yeah, the colors really pop on this one for sure. Capture personality. So one thing about my dog is he loves anything soft and anything fluffy. So having him wrapped up in a blanket really captured his personality for me.
And I think that picture too, well, both of these pictures do talk to that idea about how important it is to, well, anticipate things and always be ready to take a picture. Have your camera around as much as you possibly can, because they do cute stuff, obviously.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for that. Like when somebody tells me, oh, I don't have my camera with me, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is life. But I guess I want to capture every moment of my life pretty much. So yeah, with this one, you do have to anticipate the moment because he was looking directly at me. So I had to be ready. I had the camera ready and had my settings ready to go. So that's a good point. Soft and fluffy things all the time. This isn't necessarily soft and fluffy, but he will nap just about anywhere. He naps all the time. So I'm capturing that. Soft and fluffy. Here's also, his eyes are in focus, but his nose is a little out of focus, you can tell. So I manipulated the focus points on, one of his eyes. From here, I can't tell. I want to say it's his right eye. We're looking at left. Another example, his eyes are in focus. he was barking here, and I just happened to snap it at the right time. He's very protective too. I wouldn't say he barks all the time, but you know, FedEx knocks on the door, he's barking at them. So.
And how many different bow ties do you have for him?
I don't know. I have several. I generally use the same one until they get pretty dirty and I need to wash it, and, or if I want a different color, you know. So he's pretty handsome in his little bow ties. Capture personality. This dog, his name's Halfie. He's just a fun, fluffy cloud of a dog, and he just likes to, very friendly too. So capture what they do. You know, he's upside down on the ground looking at me. So he was in